Hello people of YouTube, today I'm going to be reading this book. I know it's been a while since I read aloud the very first Captain Underpants book. Well fine, I'm just going to continue with the second book, called Captain Underpants, The Attack at the Talking Toilets, the second epic novel by Dav Pilkey. This book has been approved by PTT, People for the Ethical Treatment of Toilets. To learn more, please visit planetpilkey.com. Hello. Before I read this book, there are some things you should know. So Harold and I have created this informative pamphlet to fill you in on the details. Please don't let this comment fall into the wrong hands. The Top Secret Truth About Captain Underpants by George Beard and Harold Hutchins, who deny everything. Once upon a time, there were two cool kids named George and Harold. We're cool. Me too. They made their own comics about a superhero named Captain Underpants. Troll! Everybody thought their comics were funny. Except for their mean old principal, Mr. Crow. Blah, blah, blah. One time, Mr. Crow's being mean to George and Harold. Blah, blah, blah. So they bought the 3D Hypno ring. They hypnotized Mr. Crow. I will obey. Then they turned him into Captain Underpants. But Mr. Crop thought he really was Captain Underpants. He jumped into one of the fight crime. Uh-oh! Troll! George and Harold tried to stop him, but they have to save the world first. Kaboom! When they got back to school, George poured water on Captain Underpants' head. He turned back into Mr. Crop, but something was wrong. Blah, blah, blah. Because now, for some strange reason, every time Mr. Crop hears somebody snap their fingers, snap, he turns back into Captain Underpants. Troll! So whatever you do, please don't snap your fingers around Mr. Crop. Please, please, please don't snap those fingers. This has been a public service announcement from George and Harold, who still deny everything. The end. Chapter 1, George and Harold. This is George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left at the time, the flat top. Harold is the one on the right with t-shirt and the back haircut. Remember that now. Depending on who you ask, you probably hear a lot of different things about George and Harold. Their teacher, Miss Rimmel, might say that George and Harold were disruptive and behaviorally challenged. Their gym teacher, Mr. Meyer, might add that they were in serious need of a major attitude adjustment. Their principal, Mr. Krupp, would probably have a few more choice words to include, like sneaky and criminally mischievous, and I'll get those boys if it's the last thing well, you get the idea. But if you ask their parents, they'd probably tell you that George and Harold were smart and sweet and very good-hearted, even if they were a bit silly at times. I'd have to agree with their parents. But even so, their silliness did get them into a lot of trouble sometimes. One fact, it got them into so much trouble, they accidentally almost destroyed the whole planet with an army of evil vicious talking toilets. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 2, This Story. One fine morning at Jerome Hort's elementary school, George and Harold had just gotten out of their 4th grade remedial gym class when they saw a big sign in the hallway. It was an announcement for the 2nd annual Invention Convention. George and Harold had fond memories of last year's Invention Convention, but this year's convention was a bit different. The first prize winner got to be principal for the day. Wow, said George. Whoever gets to be principal gets to make up all the rules for the whole day, and everybody in school has to follow those rules. We have got to win first prize this year, exclaimed Harold. Just then, George and Harold's principal, Mr. Crump, showed up. Oh, ha! He shouted. I'll bet you two are up to no good. Not really, said George. We were just reading about this year's contest. Yeah, said Harold. We're going to win first prize in the contest and be principals for the day. Ha 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 ha! Laughed Mr. Crump. Do you honestly think I'd let you two enter this year's contest after that stunt you pulled at last year's Invention Convention? George and Harold smiled and thought back to the first annual Invention Convention. Chapter 3, The Flashback. And before we continue, there's actually a streamer on this page that says last year's Invention Convention. They're convenient and lets you know the information what's going on in the book. Anyway. It was about 1 year earlier, and all of the faculty and students at Jerome Hort's elementary school had gathered in the gymnasium for what would later be known as the sticky chair incident. George and Harold had stepped out to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, said George, Harold and I have invented something that is guaranteed to keep you all glued to your seats. Yes, said Harold, we call it glue. Mr. Crop became very angry. You two know that glue, he shouted. He stood up to take the microphone away from Harold, and his chair stood up with him. Everyone in the gymnasium laughed. The school secretary, Miss Anthrop, stood up to help remove Mr. Crump's chair from his pants. Her chair stood up with her, too. Everyone in the gymnasium laughed harder. The other teacher stood up, and, you guessed it, they were stuck to their chairs as well. Everyone in the audience howled with laughter. One kid stood up to go to the bathroom, and his chair came up with him also. The audience stopped laughing so hard. They all quickly checked their chairs, and suddenly the laughter stopped completely. Everyone in the whole school was glued to their seats. You see, while it was true that George and Harold had not invented glue, they had invented a new kind of glue. By simply mixing rubber cement with concentrated orange juice mix, they had created a quick-drying, body heat-activated glue. Then they applied this special glue to every seat in the gymnasium except theirs early that morning. Everybody in the gymnasium was glaring at George and Harold and seething with anger. "I've got a good idea," said George. "What?" asked Harold. "Run!" cried George. George and Harold were grinning from ear to ear, remembering their silly invention and the chaos that followed. "That was hilarious," laughed Harold. "Yeah," chuckled George. "It'll be hard to top that this year." "Well, you won't get a chance this year," said Mr. Krupp. He took out a magnifying glass and held it up to the fine print on the sign. "This contest is open to all students in the 3rd and 4th grades except George Beard and Harold Hutchins." "You mean we can't enter the contest?" asked Harold. "It's worse than that," laughed Mr. Krupp. "You boys can't even attend this year's convention. I'm putting you two in study hall that whole day." Mr. Krupp turned and walked away, laughing victoriously. "Rats," said Harold. "What are we going to do now?" "Well," said George, "you know the old saying, if you can't join them, beat them." Chapter 4, The Invention. Early that evening, George and Harold sneaked back to school with their supplies. They crept into the gymnasium and peeked around. "I think somebody's still in here," whispered Harold. "Oh, it's just Melvin Sneedley," said George. Melvin was the school brainiac. He was busy putting some last-minute touches on his new invention for the contest. "We should wait here until he leaves," whispered Harold. "No way," said George. "He could be here all night. Let's just go over and talk to him." When Melvin saw George and Harold approaching, he was not happy. "Oh no," he said. "I'll bet you guys are here to mess with everybody's inventions." "Nice guess," said George. "Listen, we promise not to mess with your invention if you promise not to tell anybody that you saw us here tonight." Melvin looked lovingly at his invention and reluctantly agreed. "I promise," he said. "Great," said George. "Say, what is that invention of yours anyway? It looks just like a photocopy machine." "Well, it used to be a photocopy machine," said Melvin, "but I've made some major adjustments to it. Now it is an invention that will revolutionize the world. I call it the Patsy 2000. "It'll revolutionize the world, and you named it Patsy?" asked Harold. "Yes," said Melvin. "Patsy is an acronym for Photoatomic Transglobulin Yentafan Triple Atomic Exaptomizer." "I'm sorry I asked," said Harold. "Allow me to demonstrate," said Melvin. "The Patsy 2000 can take any two-dimensional image and create a living, breathing, three-dimensional copy of that image. For example, take this ordinary photograph of a mouse." Melvin placed the photo of the mouse onto the glass screen of the Patsy 2000 and pressed start. The lights in the gymnasium dimmed as all the power of the entire school seemed to get sucked into the Patsy 2000. Soon the machine began to vibrate and hum loudly, and tiny bolts of static electricity snapped out from underneath. "I hope that thing doesn't explode," said Harold. "Oh, this is nothing," said Melvin. "You should have seen how the Patsy 2000 reacted when I copied a poodle." Finally, after a series of flashes and loud zaps, everything stopped. A small ding was heard. Then a tiny mouse crawled out the side door of the Patsy 2000 onto the floor. "Isn't it wonderful?" exclaimed Melvin. George inspected the mouse closely. "That's a great trick," George laughed. "You really have me going for a while." "It's not a trick," cried Melvin. "The Patsy 2000 really does bring photos to life. I've even created living creatures from paintings and drawings." "Yeah, right," laughed Harold. "And I thought we were con artists." George and Harold walked away chuckling. It was time to move on to bigger and better things. Chapter 5, Bigger and Better Things. George and Harold went to the other end of the gymnasium, opened their backpacks, and began to work. George busying himself by turning all the spray nozzles on the automatic dog washer around, while Harold filled up the soap tank with India ink. Then they moved on to the volcano detector. "Will you please pass me the big batch of butterscotch pudding and a Phillips head screwdriver?" asked Harold. "Sure," said George as he carefully inserted eggs into the ping-pong servo-matic. Chapter 6, The Invention Convention. The following day started out sunny and cheerful. The students and faculty filed into the gymnasium and checked the seats very carefully before sitting down. "Greetings," said Mr. Krupp, who was standing up at the microphone. "You don't need to worry about sticky seats today," he said. "I've taken measures to ensure that this Invention Convention won't be a disaster like last year's." Everyone settled in as Madison Mancini, a third grader, stepped on stage to demonstrate her automatic dog washer. "First," said Madison, "you put your dog in the tub. Then you press this button." Madison pressed the start button. At first, nothing happened. Then suddenly, a spurt of inky black water sprayed up and out over the crowd. Everyone, except the dog, got soaked as Madison tried desperately to turn off the sprayers. "I can't stop it!" she cried. "Someone turn all the nozzles around!" "No, who could have done that?" asked Mr. Krupp. Next up was Donnie Schumacher with his ping-pong servo-matic. He turned the machine on, and immediately it began hurling extra-large grade A eggs into the crowd. Floop, 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 went the machine. Splat, 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 went the eggs. "I can't turn the machine off!" cried Donnie. "Somebody jam the paperclip into the controller." Now who could have done that? Asked Miss Ribble. Freddie Moore's volcano detector was also a big flop. When Freddie connected the circuits to the 9-volt battery, a large spring, which had been crammed into the center of his miniature volcano, launched a giant plastic bag of butterscotch pudding high into the ground. Boing! It landed somewhere between the third and fourth rows. Splat! Hey! Whined Freddie. Somebody put pudding in my volcano! No, who could have done that? Asked Mr. Meaner. The rest of the day went on much the same way, with people shouting everything from, hey, who put oatmeal in my solar-powered leaf blower, to, hey, who let all the mice out of my triple dude buggy? It wasn't long before everyone fled the gymnasium and the second annual Invention convention had to be called off. How could this have happened? Cried Mr. Krupp as he wiped chocolate syrup, pencil shavings, and cream of mushroom soup off his face and shirt. Georgia had been in study hall all day long. I put them there myself. Excuse me, Mr. Krupp, said Melvin Sneely. I think I have an answer to your question. Chapter 7. Busted. Crash! Went the door to the study hall room. Mr. Krupp stormed in like a crazy person. Georgia Hill had never seen him this upset before. You boys are in so much trouble! Mr. Krupp shouted. I'm putting you to permanent detention for the rest of the school year! Wait a second, cried George. You can't prove anything. Yeah, said Harold. We've been here all day. Mr. Krupp smiled devilishly and looked toward the door. Oh, Melvin, he called. Melvin Sneely stepped into the room covered in mustard, eggshells, and shredded coconut. They did it, Melvin said, pointing at George and Harold. I saw him last night in the gym. Melvin! Cried George, horrified. You promise! I changed my mind, Melvin said, grinning smugly. Have fun in detention! Anyways, Chapter 8, the Invention Convention Detention. After school, Mr. Krupp ushered George and Harold into the detention room and wrote a long sentence on the chalkboard. I will never do anything that angers my handsome and charming principal, Mr. Krupp, ever again. From now on, growled Mr. Krupp, you boys will spend 2 hours a day after school copying this sentence over and over. I want every chalkboard in this room filled completely. On his way out the door, Mr. Krupp turned and said with an evil grin, and if either of you leaves this room for any reason, I'm going to suspend you both. Now, as you might have guessed, writing sentences was nothing new to George and Hale. The two boys went until Mr. Krupp left the room. Then they each took 4 homemade wooden rods out of their backpacks. The rods had holes in them that George and Hale had drilled in George's dad's workshop. George screwed the rods together while Harold inserted a piece of chalk into each hole. Then they each took a pole and began copying Mr. Krupp's sentence. Every time they wrote one sentence, the wooden poles made 12. After about 3.5 minutes, every chalkboard in the room was completely filled. George and Harold sat down and admired their work. We've got a lot of time on our hands now, said George. Got any ideas? Let's make a new comic book, said Harold. So the two boys took out some paper and pens and created an all-new adventure about their favorite superhero. It was called Captain Underpants, the Attack of the Talking Toilets. Chapter 9, Captain Underpants, the Attack of the Talking Toilets by George B. Harold Hitchens. Captain Underpants, the Attack of the Talking Toilets, stories by George B. Peters by Harold Hitchens. One day at school, everything was pretty normal. The lunch ladies were serving toasted rat sandwiches. The principal was yelling, blah, blah, blah. And the gym teacher was beaming to everybody. My grandma can run faster than you guys. Then a UFO appeared. It zapped the school with an evil ray. The ray made all the toilets come to life. It made them evil, too. The toilets were hungry. Yum, 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 yum. So they ate the gym teacher. Help! The toilets just grabbed somebody's car and ate up the gym teacher. Lord have mercy! Was it my car? This is like a job for Captain Underpants! Crash! Captain Underpants ran to the storage room. Yum, 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 yum. He found a bunch of plungers. He put them in the toilets. Their mouths got stuck. Oh! Raise the Captain Underpants! No, stop that evil UFO! Captain Underpants went outside and saw the UFO. It opened up. Click! And out jumped the terrible Turbo Toilet 2000. I'll flush you! They had a big fight. Captain Underpants was faster than the speed of his spin. Zip! More powerful than boxer shorts. Kick! Oh! And able to lay top villains without getting a wedgie. Captain Underpants snuck up behind the Turbo Toilet 2000 and gave him a wedgie. Wedgie power! Oh, tree! Then he hung the TT-2000 on his stop sign and pulled back hard. Then let go. Doing! Kaboom! The spaceship blew up and all the toilets returned to normal. Even the gym teacher escaped. Oh, man. The end. Chapter 10. A Big Mistake. George and Harold sat together in the detention room, reading through their newest comic book and beaming proudly. We've got to go to the office and make copies of this, said George, so we can sell them on the playground tomorrow. We can't, said Harold. Don't you remember? Mr. Krupp said he'd suspend us if he caught us leaving this room. Then he won't let him catch us, said George. George and Harold sneaked out of the room quietly and crawled down the hall to the office. Uh-oh, said Harold. There's a bunch of teachers in there. We'll never get to use the copy machine. Said George. Are there any other copy machines in the school? How about the one that Melvin had in the gym? Asked Harold. Oh yeah, said George. George and Harold crept over to the gym and found the Patsy 2000. I wonder if this machine still makes copies, said Harold. Melvin did say that he had made some adjustments to it. Oh, he probably just grabbed a mouse in there to fool us, said George. It's the oldest trick of the book. I'm sure the machine still makes regular copies. George placed the cover of their new comic book face down on the glass screen and pressed start. All at once, the lights in the whole school dimmed and the Patsy 2000 began to shake and clunk around wildly. Giant volts of static electricity zapped out the bottom of the machine as a gray whirlwind rose from the top. Loose papers and other small objects in the room were sucked into the wind, and they spun above the machine like a raging cyclone. I don't think it's able to do this! Shouted George over the horrible noise. Finally, after a series of flashes and loud zaps, the noise, wind, and sparks stopped altogether. The only sound that could be heard was of something groaning and clawing inside the bloated, battered frame of the Patsy 2000. It sounds like something's alive inside there, said Harold. George snatched the comic book from the top of the machine. Let's get out of here, he cried. Just then, a small ding was heard, and a full-size, shiny white toilet emerged from the side of the Patsy 2000. Its teeth were sharp and jagged, and its angry eyeballs glowed with red, swelling veins. Yah, blah, 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 cried the evil toilet. Almost immediately, another talking toilet emerged, followed by another and another and another. Yah, blah, blah, blah. They cried, oh no! Melvin was right! The phototopic transgoblet yet to venture atomic system budget really does create living, breathing, three-dimensional copies of two-dimensional images! Harold cried convolutedly. I've got an idea, said George. What? Actually, right! Cried George. Chapter 11, the Invention, Convention, Detention, Suspension. George and Harold screamed and ran out the gym door, closing it tightly behind them. Aha! Yelled Mr. Crump, who was just coming down the hall. You boys left the detention room. You know what that means, don't you? It wasn't our fault, cried Harold. Too bad! Mr. Crump shouted with delight. You boys are officially suspended! Wait, cried George. You've got to listen. Behind this door is an army of evil fishers. I don't have to listen to you boys ever again. Ha ha ha! Laughed Mr. Crump. Now get your stuff and get out of this school. But, Harold stammered. You don't understand. Get out! Mr. Crump screamed. George and Harold groaned and walked to their lockers to collect their stuff. God, said Harold. In one day we've got a detention, a suspension, and we've created an army of evil talking toilets who want to take over the world. That's a pretty bad day, even by our standards, said George. Oh well, said Harold. I just hope things don't get any worse. Chapter 12. Things get worse. Word spread quickly throughout the office that George and Harold had been suspended. The teachers rushed out to cheer and laugh at the two boys. You're in big trouble now, chuckled Miss Anthrop. I can't wait to call your parents and tell them the news. Let's take their desks outside, chop them up, cried Miss Ribble. Let's throw a party in the gym, shouted Mr. Meter. No, cried George. Whatever you do, don't open the door to the gym. We can do whatever you like, snarled Mr. Meter as he dashed over to the gymnasium door. Look, I'm opening the door. He quickly opened the gym door. Now closing the door, he said. Now open the door again, and an evil toilet had stuck its mouth through the door, snapped Mr. Meter up, and flushed him and swallowed him whole. The talking toilets then pushed their way through the open gymnasium doors and spilled out into the hallway. Yah, blah, blah, blah. The toilets bellowed. Yah, blah, blah, blah. The teachers couldn't believe their eyes. They screamed and ran for their lives. Only Mr. Crump, Miss Ribble, and George and Harold remained frozen in fear. They watched paralyzed as the talking toilets came nearer and nearer. Finally, Miss Ribble pointed at the toilets and snapped her fingers. Snap! Go away! She cried. Go away this minute! But the toilets didn't listen. They moved closer and closer. Finally, Miss Ribble turned and ran. Mr. Crump, however, just stood there in a daze. George and Harold looked up at him. Uh-oh, said Harold. Did she just snap her fingers? Yep, said George. Now we're really in trouble. And George was right, for at that moment, Mr. Crump had begun to change. A silly, heroic smile came over his face as he stood defiantly before his foes. I'll put a stop to you, violent villains, he said fearlessly. But first, I need some supplies. Mr. Crump turned and dashed to his office. George and Harold ran after him. Why did Miss Ribble have to snap her fingers? Cried Harold. Why? Never mind that, cried George. Mr. Crump is turning to Captain Underpants. We gotta pour water over his head before it's too late! Chapter 13. It's too late. When George and Harold reached Mr. Crump's office, they found only his clothes, shoes, and toupee on the floor. Look, said Harold. The window is open and one of the red curtains is missing. What do we do now? Asked George. Do we save Captain Underpants or we just stay here and get eaten by a bunch of toilets? Let me think about that one, said Harold as he climbed out the window. George quickly collected Mr. Crump's things and shoved them into his backpack. Then he jumped out the window after Harold. The two boys slid down the flagpole and ran off after Captain Underpants. "Where does he think he's going?" asked George. "I have no idea," said Harold. "Boy, better run fast because I think we're being followed." Captain Underpants dashed through the backyards of some nearby houses and collected pairs of underwear from the clotheslines. "Mammy," said the little boy looking out his window, "a man in red came to steal our underwear. And now two boys are being chased by a ferocious-looking toilet with sharp-pointed teeth screaming, 'Yum, yum, eat 'em up.'" "Yeah, right," laughed his mother. "Just how gullible do you think I am?" Chapter 14, The Talking Toilet Takeover. When Captain Underpants was finished commandeering the underwear of local civilians, he dashed back to Jerome Hurt's elementary to save the day. The school was now overrun with chaos. Miss Robo came tearing out the door, followed by several evil toilets. "Help me!" she cried. "This will every teacher in the whole building except me." "Don't worry, ma'am. I will let them meet you up," Captain Underpants said as the toilet ate her up. "Oops," said Captain Underpants. Now only George, Harold, and Captain Underpants were left. They stood on the front lawn of the school, completely surrounded by hungry, drooling toilets. "Yum, yum, bam, up!" The talking toilet shouted. "Yum, yum, bam, up! Yum, yum, bam, up! Yum, yum, bam, up!" "What the?" cried Harold. "Never underestimate the power of underwear!" cried Captain Underpants as he stretched and shot underwear into the winning mouths of the talking toilets. Unfortunately, the toilets just swallowed the underwear whole. It only seemed to make them hungrier and hungrier. "If only we could think of something that would make them really sick," said George. "Yeah," Harold continued. "Something so vile and disgusting it would make them all blow their cookies and writhe in agony." Suddenly, George and Harold's faces lit up. "Cafeteria food!" they shouted. And faster than a speeding waistband, our three heroes dashed into the school. Chapter 15, Cream Chip Beef to the Rescue. George, Harold, and Captain Underpants got inside the school safely and closed the front door behind them. "I think the toilets are all outside," said George. "But not for long," said Harold. Quickly, they ran to the school's kitchen and discovered a cart holding a large vat of something green and sludgy. "Yuck," said George, holding his nose. "What is that stuff?" "I think it's tomorrow's lunch," said Harold. "Perfect," said George. "I never thought I'd be glad to see cream cheese beef." Together, they wheeled the tub of stinky green glop down the hallway and out the side door of the school. Captain Underpants sat on the cart and stretched a pair of underwear over his head like a slingshot. George stood over him, scooped some cafeteria food into the other and stretched it back. Harold wheeled the cart toward the talking toilets. "Toilet!" shouted Captain Underpants loudly. The talking toilets turned and saw our three heroes. All at once, they shouted, "Yum, yum, bam, up!" and the chase was on. Harold pulled the cart across the playground as the toilet zipped after them. "Fire one!" cried Captain Underpants. George shot a glob of cream chip beef into the first toilet's mouth. The toilet swallowed it whole. Harold kept pulling as George scooped another serving into the underwear and pulled it back. "Fire two!" cried Captain Underpants. Zip went the cafeteria food right into the second toilet's mouth. The whole process repeated itself until every last toilet had swallowed at least 2 servings of cream chip beef. "We're almost out of ammo!" Captain Underpants shouted. "I don't think I can run anymore," said Harold, huffing and puffing. "Don't worry, look," said George, pointing at the toilets. They had all slowed down and were beginning to grunt and wobble around. Their eyes crossed, and they turned an odd shade of green. "Look out!" cried Harold. "I think they're gonna hurl!" And that's just what they did. George, Harold, and Captain Underpants watched as the toilets upchucked everything they had eaten during the day. The cream chip beef, the underwear, even the toilets all came out without a scratch. Then the toilets spun around in small circles and fell to the ground, dead. George checked the teachers. "They're alive," he said. "Unconscious, but alive." "Wow," said Harold. "That was easy." "Too easy," said George. "What do you mean?" asked Harold. George pulled their comic book out of his backpack and showed it to Harold. "Remember how the Patsy 2000 turned everything on the front cover of our comic book to life?" he asked. "Yes, so?" said Harold. "Well," said George, as he pointed to the Turbo Toy 2000 on the front cover of the comic, "we haven't seen him yet." Chapter 16, The Turbo Toy 2000. Suddenly, the Turbo Toy 2000 came charging out the front door of the school with a terrible crash. The earth rumbled beneath its mighty footsteps as nearly a ton of twisting steel and raging porcelain descended upon our heroes. "You three meddling fools may have destroyed my army of talking toilets," screamed the Turbo Toy 2000, "but you're all out of cafeteria food. How are you gonna stop me?" "I'll tell you how," Captain Underpants said boldly. "With wedgie power." "Wait, Captain Underpants," cried George. "You can't fight that thing. He'll rip you to pieces." "Boys," said Captain Underpants nobly, "I must fight valiantly for truth, justice, and all this pre-shrunken cockney." Captain Underpants laid onto the Turbo Toy 2000 and the battle began. "I sure hope this doesn't lead to incredibly graphic violence," said Harold. "Me too," said George. Chapter 17, The Incredibly Graphic Violence Chapter Part 1 in Flip-O-Rama. Warning, the following chapter contains a tendency showing a man in his underwear battling a giant toilet. Please do not try this at home. In the past, literally dozens of epic novels have been written that have changed the course of history. Moby Dick, Gone with the Wind, and of course, Captain Underpants, The Attack of the Talking Toilets. The only difference between our novel and those other Brand X novels is that ours is the only one that cares enough to bring you the latest in cheesy animation technology. The art of Flip-O-Rama. Wedgie power versus potty power. Oh no! The potty power punch prevails! The carnivorous commode captures the captain. Chapter 18, Harold and the Purple Ballpoint Pen. Everything seemed hopeless. Captain Underpants had slipped and fallen to the mouth of the Turbo Toilet 2000, and now the giant toilet was coming after George and Harold. Laughed the powerful porcelain predator. Once I've eaten you two kids up, I'll take over the world! Not if we have anything to say about it, yelled George. George and Harold ran into the school and locked the door behind them. The Turbo Toilet 2000 banged against the door with its fist, shouting, "You boys can't hide here forever!" George and Harold ran to the gym. I got a plan, said George. We need to invent a character who could defeat a giant robot toilet. How about a giant robot urinal? Asked Harold. We could call it the Urinator. No way, said George. They'll never let us get away with that in a children's book. We're skating on thin ice as it is. All right, said Harold. How about a giant plunger robot? He can carry a really big plunger, and that's it! Cried George. So Harold took out his purple ballpoint pen and began to draw. Give him laser eyes, said George. All right, said Harold. And give him turbo atomic rocket boosters, said George. Got it, said Harold. And make him obey our every command, said George. I'm way ahead of you, said Harold. Harold finished his drawing, and George inspected it carefully. This just might work, said George. Yeah, said Harold, if the Patsy 2000 can hold out. The boys turned and looked at the dented, cracked, and beaten-up machine laying on its side in the corner. George and Harold pushed the Patsy 2000 upright and dusted it off. Come on, Patsy, old girl, said George. We really need you now. Yes, said Harold. The fate of the entire planet is in our hands. Chapter 19, The Incredible Robo-Plunger. George took Harold's picture and placed it on the screen of the Patsy 2000 and pressed start. The lights around them dimmed as the weird machine began to shake and smoke. Lightning bolts zapped, thunder clapped, and the whole gymnasium was soaked with phototom and transmogabulatory yet to fan triple the times as zyptic energy. Come on, Patsy! George shouted over the horrible noise. You can do it, baby! So, finally, a small ding was heard, and the Patsy 2000 coughed up a huge metallic behemoth. Clunk! It rose up and stood valiantly before George and Harold. It was the incredible Robo-Plunger. Hooray! Cried George. It worked! Way to go, Patsy! Harold cheered. Now let's get outside to kiss some Turbo Toilet Tushy! Chapter 20, The Incredible Graphic Novel Chapter Part 2 in Flip-O-Rama. Warning, the following chapter contains terribly naughty scenes depicting a giant toilet get his shiny hiney kicked. All toilet violence was carefully monitored by the PETT, People for the Ethical Treatment of Toilets. No actual toilets were harmed during the making of this chapter. The Incredible Robo-Plunger to the rescue. The Incredible Robo-Plunger kicks the TT-2000's tushy. The TT-2000 takes the plunge. Chapter 21, The Aftermath. The Incredible Robo-Plunger had defeated the evil Turbo Toilet 2000, but George and Harold's problems weren't over yet. They reached into the crumbled mouth of the TT-2000 and pulled out their principal. What happened here? Cried Mr. Crump. The school's been destroyed, the teachers are all unconscious, and I'm standing here in my underwear! Uh-oh, Harold whispered. Captain Underpants must have gotten toilet water on his head. He turned back into Principal Crump. George took Mr. Crump's closing hair out of his backpack and handed them to him. I'm ruined! Principal Crump whined as he dressed himself. I'm going to be held responsible for this mess. I'm going to lose my job! Maybe not, said George. We can fix everything and clean up this whole mess. Yeah, said Harold, but it'll cost you. Cost me what? Asked Mr. Crump. Well, said George, we'd like you to cancel our detention and our suspension. And we also like to be principals for the day, said Harold. All right, said Mr. Crump. If you can really fix everything, you've got a deal. George and Harold turned and spoke to the Incredible Robo-Plunger. All right, Robo guys, said George. Make yourself useful and pick up all this mess. Yeah, fix up the school too, said Harold. Use your laser eyes to repair all the broken windows and stuff. And when you're done, said George, take all the evidence and fly it up to Uranus. And don't come back, said Harold. Chapter 22, to make a long story short, the robot obeyed. Chapter 23, the aftermath. The Incredible Robo-Plunger soared off into space just as the teachers began to regain consciousness. I just had the strangest dream, said Miss Ripple. It was all about these evil toilets who wanted to take over the world. We had the same dream too, said the other teachers. Well, said Mr. Crump, things turned out all right after all. Not quite, said George. It's payback time. Chapter 24, Principles for the Day. Or the Invention, Convention, Detention, Suspension, Prevention. Bars, eminent be weary. Attention students, said George over the intercom the following day. This is Principal George. You're all excused from classes today. There will be no homework or tests, and everybody gets an A+ for the day. That's right, said Principal Harold. Also, we are hosting an all-day recess outside, complete with free pizza, french fries, cotton candy, and a live DJ. Now go outside and play. Principal George and Principal Harold strolled out to the playground to behold their glorious domain. George got a slice of pepperoni pizza, while Harold made himself a banana split at the all-you-can-eat ice cream sundae bar. It's good to be the principal, said George. Yep, said Harold. I wish we could be principals every day. Later, George and Harold paid a visit to the unfortunate folks who were spending the day writing sentences in the detention room. All the teachers were there, along with Mr. Krupp and Melvin Sneely, Tattletale, and Crook. Before I continue with the book, let's see what they wrote. Melvin wrote, I will not be a tattletale. Mr. wrote down, I will stop being such a crab. Mr. Meter writes down, I will chill out. Miss Anthrope writing down, I will get a life. And finally, Mr. Crock written down, I will be very, 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 very nice to George the Great and the Amazing Harold. Anyways, continue. Mr. Crock looked out the window at the all-day recess celebration going on outside. How are you boys going to pay for all that ice cream and pizza? He asked. Oh, we sold some stuff, said Harold. What did you sell? Asked Mr. Crock. Your antique walnut desk and leather chair, said George, and all the furniture in the teacher's lounge. What? Screamed Mr. Crock. I think we better leave now, said Harold. George and Harold left the detention room in a hurry. Miss Arthur snapped her fingers at them. Snap! Come back here right now! She yelled. Uh-oh, said George. Did Miss Arthur just snap her fingers? Within seconds, Mr. Crump dashed out of the detention room and ran down the hallway toward his office. He had a goofy, heroic, all too familiar-looking smile on his face. Oh, no! Cried Harold. Here we go again, said George. Draw it all! Of course, I don't want to get called for copyright, so I'm telling you right now that this book was brought to you by Dav Pilkey, the creator of the entire Captain Underpants series. Read the books, enjoy the books, read the spin-offs, enjoy the spin-offs, and the alluring colors on the pages. And I'll see you next time, where I read the third epic novel by Dav Pilkey. Captain Underpants, the Invention, the Commoded, the Captain Underpants, the Space, the Scholastic, the Eagle Launchers of Innards. I'll see you there.